Take one.
Okay, can you tell me what attracted you to Sinclair? An epic.
About the epic
Yeah,
campaign?
what attracted you? Why were you interested in Upton Sinclair?
Well, I was still interested in Roosevelt and what he was trying to do for the country. And he had only been elected in 32 and inaugurated in 33. And so here's this campaign in before 34. And it just seemed like a continuation of the Roosevelt type of thing. And so I was interested in that. But mostly I was interested because Bob was interested, and we were newly married. And he said, let's do something for the epic campaign. And I said, look, we're having a hard enough time just surviving in the Depression. I think we should work on our own affairs first. But I was persuaded.
Okay.
And so then I got into it, and I started helping them organize the clubs, and I also was assigning the precincts, and I was doing the paperwork, getting the precinct kits ready for the volunteers to go and use. So I got deeply involved in that.
Was it an exciting movement to be part of? Was it an exciting movement to be part of it? Did you feel like...
Yeah, you did, and you found so many other people that were interested.
Sorry, can you start again by telling, since my own questions won't be in the film, if you can tell me that it was an exciting movement, you found, what you felt about being part of the epic movement?
Well, it was being a part of a movement and trying to meet the needs of the concerns of the people at that time. I think it would.
Excuse me?
We just rolled out.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Susie Clifton, take two.
So if you could
two.
describe, what you felt about being part of this movement.
Well, I'd never been in a movement before. I went to UCLA, and I was very close to the students there as just students. But it wasn't until this terrible thing came along where factories closed down and 5,000 people at a time were out of jobs through no fault of their own, no control they had over it. And it was of a genuine concern. And so people that you would have just walked past in the grocery store, you started talking about the price of this particular thing and can you afford it? And pretty soon you began to feel this feeling about other people's worries. And the young people, because we were young and very poor. At that time, just before we were married, I had a job wrapping shoes and a cashier in a little shoe store down on North Broadway. And I got $2.72 a day, not an hour, but $2.72 a day. And that didn't buy very much.
So were you afraid ever that you weren't going to make it, that times were so bad?
Well, Bob and I, when we decided to get married, we knew we were jumping off, and how we were going to make it, we weren't sure. Now, he was practicing law, but again, people couldn't pay their legal bills, and people could get a divorce for $25, but they couldn't even pay the $25. And so we moved in one of the empty apartments in his parents' apartment house, and half the tenants there couldn't pay.
You said that your own parents lost their apartment?
Hmm?
You said that your own parents lost their house during the Depression?
Right. In fact, when I first took Bob out to meet my folks, they had just gotten their notice of a foreclosure. So we still had the home that we built out in Southgate, but it was going to go down the drain very shortly, and it did within 3 months.
So at one point, your parents had lost their home, and Bob's parents were also afraid of losing theirs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me?
Well, they had an 8-unit apartment, and half the tenants weren't able to pay their rent.
Okay, but times were so hard that you would never. Did you? I guess again, just what the fear. If your parents lost their house, were they? It was that.
They either moved in with the kids or the kids moved in with them.
Let's just stop, the ice cream truck is very,
Yeah, it's gonna
Wow.
be coming up the street.
yeah, let's just wait.
This will be take 3 on Susie.
Okay. So I just want to go back to the situation with your own, with just being on the edge at that time and how fragile really your own living situation was. So if you could tell me that again.
Would you like to know about our honeymoon? We
Sure.
borrowed his brother's car,
Uh-huh.
and we went from here to Indiana, and we started out with $100, and we were to pick up money from being sent forward from his law office had been collected after we left in St. Louis, and then another one in Indianapolis, and then another one in a small town in Indiana. And when we picked up the $25, we had 50 cents between us. I mean, you'd never let your kids go off on something like that nowadays.
Right.
But we were young and very altruistic about things, and one way or another it was going to work. And somehow we got home.
Wow. Okay. But I want to know again, if you don't mind, about your own, that
Take 4?
about your parents and just that it was so close to yourselves, that it was so easy to lose a home or to not, that's the environment that Sinclair came up in, right? That the poverty.
Well, it didn't come on suddenly. It got harder and harder for my folks to be able to make the payment. And there was only one large loan company, Pacific, at that time. And so we knew that sooner or later, we were shorting ourselves not on food, but we were eating very cheap food, if I could explain it that way. And a lot of macaroni and rice puddings and things like that, and very damn little steaks or chops. In fact, we didn't have steaks and chops in our house. And so we could feel it coming, and my dad was short changing things. By that I mean he cut off the telephone, he cut off the newspaper, he cut off other things that were frills for us just to try to make the mortgage payment. And pretty soon, so it wasn't sudden, but pretty soon you got the notice that you were foreclosed.
Okay. Can you tell me,
Let me say that the state legislature, because of the number of foreclosures, put a moratorium and stretched out the time that the loan institutions could foreclose, because it affected so many people.
you told me that there was no viable Democratic Party in California at the time, and there hadn't been a Democratic governor in 40 years. Can you tell me about that?
Well, there were a few office holders, but there hadn't been a governor for 40 years in 34.
Yes. And what was the state of the Democratic Party in 34?
Well, as far as we were concerned, the Democratic Party was Washington and FDR. We had no feeling of local or state Democratic Party. So we were brand new at politics when we got into this. We were really babes in the woods, and everyone else with us were babes in the woods.
And so when you heard about Sinclair, you felt that he was representing the Democratic Party?
Yes, absolutely. And these assembly candidates that we fostered, and the state senate candidates and the congressional candidates, those were all Democrats. In fact, we all thought we were part of the Democratic Party.
When Sinclair, I want to ask you the same question I asked your husband.
Lynn, I gotta change
Oh,
rooms.
okay.
Okay.
Fine. Okay.
and a way to live.
Okay, for the cassette, this is the start of 314-30.
I remember one big meeting, somebody said, well, what are the, because it was in Beverly Hills, what are the Beverly Hills dowagers going to do? Well, he said, they're going to walk the dogs. They'll be paid to walk the dogs.
Yeah, sure. There's a half a roll left here.
Okay.
Okay, this is, I guess, take 5, right? Yeah.
Were you optimistic the whole time that Sinclair would win? Did you feel that the movement was growing and you were gaining support?
Yes, absolutely. We
you
thought he
describe-
would.
can you
We
des-
thought he would be elected governor again.
Can you describe the feeling that you felt at that time?
Well, it was the duplication of Roosevelt winning, and it can be done if you get everybody involved, push lots of doorbells, persuade people to go down and vote, and you will win.
And what did you feel when Sinclair didn't win?
Very disappointed. Very disappointed, but you were ready to pick up things and go on for the 36 campaign for Roosevelt.
Okay, great. And what did you feel? Did you feel that even though Sinclair didn't win, that there was a victory because the other 27 Democrats were elected?
All these legislators, absolutely. And quite a few of the legislators were so poor themselves that they hitchhiked to Sacramento for their first term.
Did you feel this was a new era in the Democratic Party in California?
Well, we didn't know what the old era was, to be honest with you. We felt we were involved in it, and so we had the feeling of everyone else of how we're moving to change things.
Okay, great. Can you, was there ever, the anti-Sinclair material, you told me before that you received anti-Sinclair material in your utility bills, is that right?
Well, the Los Angeles Times, at that time, which was very, very conservative, ran terrible cartoons and things. I presume that a conservative feels Conrad's cartoons are the way we felt at that time about the Times slant on the cartoons. And the LA Times was a very reactionary newspaper at that time. During that era, they'd have a picture of, well, it was a little later, a picture of Earl Warren running for governor and Jimmy Roosevelt running for governor. And it was a very statesman-like picture. It was on the front page, and it was the same number of inches of paper. But it was, Roosevelt was one of the most idiot-looking pictures he ever had. And so you just look at just that. And so you felt it was stacked against you.
Okay, I think the last thing that I really want to ask is about, I want you to describe going to the movie theater from your point of view when, when you saw those
Well,
newsreels.
This was almost the election.
Okay, wait, we have to wait till, okay, start again.
This was almost the election, the June primary. And our daughter was born on June the 4th, and I think it was just within a couple of days, and this was 2 weeks before. And Bob took me to,
I'm sorry, no, the airplane.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, take number 7.
Get this slate in and okay, tell me about.
So I can remember this was a special occasion because we normally couldn't afford to go to a theater in Westwood, a big theater. We went to little neighborhood theaters occasionally. And this was because we were so close to the end of the campaign, and then I was going to have the baby in 2 weeks, and then I was going to be tied up with the baby. So he took me for that reason. And he bought low seats because uncomfortable. And so we were sitting clear in the back when he did this, and I had no idea he was going to do it.
Tell me what he did. You're sitting in the back of the movie theater.
And the newsreel came along, and the newsreels were like ads you see in the movies now. They were just interspersed in there. And this was a picture of people getting off the trains that were going to live in luxury in California. And they were saying it was because Sinclair was running for governor, it was going to attract all of the unemployed people from all over the United States here, and which I thought was very unfair. It was a stacked thing. And when he stood up and said, "And I like my movies without propaganda," and the lights went on, everybody turned around to see who this idiot was. As I say, I was feeling very conspicuous anyway. We left.
Okay, great.
You're all that, just right at the end.
Okay. Good. I think
I might say that those kids are all Democrats.